Texas A&M wins their biggest game in years, and Mike Elko comes out throwing shade.
Get ready for the 3-point stance. 3 different minds, 3 different opinions. 3 dudes talking ball. It's Kenton. It's Jay. It's Zach. Time to bring the heat, boys.
Yes, it's the 3-point stance. Zach Blackerby, Kenton Gibbs, here with you. Who won the weekend? Who lost the weekend? That's coming up, as well as, hey, who's in the playoff right now? We touch on that as well. But Kenton, the headline of the weekend that I thought was fascinating, Mike Elko and his Texas A&M Aggies look years ahead of schedule. They are red hot. They go to LSU, control the game, and you could do anything in this situation. The eyes of the college football world are on you, and you come out and say, this is a real program. It's not fake. It's not a politician running this program, talking fast and BSing everybody. This is a real program. And for all the recruits out there, this is a real place. I love the messaging for recruiting. I love that.
Yeah.
But you just had your biggest win, the program's biggest win in maybe the last half decade, maybe so.
Uh-huh.
And you're out here throwing shade. I don't love it. I don't love it. Make this about you, Elko. You're doing things at Texas A&M.
Can I ask you a question, Zach?
Go ahead.
Who do you think the shade was intended for? Who do you think the shade was levied against to say? Because if there's shade, somebody has to have the sun blocked out from them. So who's the shade pointed at? Talk to me.
I assume Jimbo Fisher.
Interesting. So you're saying he was shading the guy that was there before him after their biggest win in 5 years.
That's what that's what the public perception seems to be. Yes.
I believe this is much to do about nothing. I love me some Coach Elko. I say it all the time. He's an Aggie man in Aggie land, and he's having himself a ball down there because, a lot of people refer to A&M as weirdos, and I do too. But guess what? Mike Elko is their type of weirdo. He's their type of guy that loves that place, and he's not leaving. And also, I'm going to tell you, a lot of people would have been scared to say, Connor Wegman, he's a preseason Heisman favorite. One of the guys I believe had top 10 or 15 odds. He's the guy that everybody said he's the incumbent. You got to roll with him. Through the ups, the downs, the goods, the bads, you got to roll with him. Not so fast, my friend.
Sure.
This man said, you know what? To hell with that. He's stinking it up. He's stinking it up. We do not allow this type of trap. The 12th man don't deserve this. And he pulled his starter from Marcel Reed, who, by the way, he took that cape off and went crazy on him in there. He said, let me hold my jacket. Hold my jacket. I got something to show y'all. I'm going to do my little challenge in front of the nation. And boy, I'll tell you, we're going to talk about winners and losers for the weekend later, but damn it, the 2026 Heisman race just became a big winner with the way Marcel Reed played down the stretch. So I have no problem with what we saw from Elko after the game, because at the end of the day, when you win, you can talk your talk, whatever your talk is. When you win, you can say, fans, you need to do this. My players need to do that. Everybody right, everybody wrong. You can talk your talk. And like you said, this is their biggest win in half a decade. Well, I think you all right to talk your talk. Johnny Football and Mike Evans ain't walking through that door and you still winning big games. I think you've earned the right to say a little something, be it if you're hitting Jimbo Fisher, be it if you're hitting Sark over in Austin, be it if you're hitting Kirby, be it if you hitting whoever Florida decides to get next, don't matter. You won.
Yeah, I don't know. Everybody in the college football world's paying attention to you because of this win, and you can have any messaging you want. You're like, I guess you want to say to the college football world and the recruits of yes, we actually have a coach now that can develop talent. I think that's really what he's trying to do. I think he's talking to recruits here of if you look down on A&M, don't do that anymore because we're here.
Right.
I get what he was trying to do, but it's just don't be thinking about Jimbo Fisher after you beat LSU. That's where my mind is at. In a vacuum, I love the crap talk. I love the pettiness. And if this quote happened at some other point, I'd be like, yes, this is hilarious. Nobody thinks Jimbo Fisher's a good coach at this point. I think it would have been awesome. It's just the timing. I don't know. But hey, People ran with it. People are talking about it Monday morning still, and it's maybe adding a little bit more life to this this A&M win. So maybe he knew what he was doing.
He earned all the life to it at the end of the day. You know,
Right.
I believe, and this was my fault, honestly, because I started to drink Brian Kelly Kool-Aid in 2024. It's really on me. I apologize, 3-Point Stands fans. I should have never did that.
I was a little surprised when you leaned into him because you picked LSU. I was a little surprised.
I did.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know that I knew who Wegman was. And I didn't know about Marcel in the background.
Fair.
You know, I didn't know that this was Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, and the whole time they had Teddy Pendergrass singing backup. I didn't. Who could have guessed? Who could have known that? You know. So I look at this thing and I say to myself, "Hey, shout out to Elko for being ballsy enough to make the change." Because objectively speaking, what else in that game changed at a high level? Like I'm watching the game. I rewatched the condensed version of the game because anybody who lies and says they watch every game in real time, you're a liar. Nobody can do that.
It's mathematically impossible. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. But I rewatched the condensed version of the game. I'm looking defensively saying, what did they change up in the second half? What was the big adjustment? There was none. The only difference was saying, put 10 in. And he cooked. He cooked spectacularly. That man made that LSU defense look like hibachi. And Brian Kelly went into a shell and did his bedwetting thing as he does. But again, credit to Elko. They took this game. It was not like LSU gave it to them. They absolutely took this game by being aggressive.
How high are you on Texas A&M? The AP poll has them at 10. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's right, or should they be higher?
You know, with the ebb and flow of this thing, right? I get it. It's not about who you were. It's about who you are.
Right.
And with that being said, only loss coming to Notre Dame, a Notre Dame team that loss looks better and better as the season goes on.
True.
And they make a switch at quarterback because, again, my biggest question about A&M was always offensively, what are you going to do at that quarterback position? I think they have enough everywhere else to get it done. But the quarterback position in particular was the one that worried. I think the 10 is right for them. I really do. I think they're trending in the right direction. I think they're playing really, really good football right now. And if 10 ain't right for them, we'll have chances to see it down the stretch here. We'll see very quickly, oh, this team is fraudulent, and they just beat a more fraud LSU team if that's the case.
Yeah. Their schedule lightens up until the last week of the season where they play Texas. It's like, well, no. They will tell us very clearly who they are one way or the other by that point. I 100% agree with you. All right, we're gonna play a game. We're gonna play a little bit of a game segment coming up. We're gonna try here on the 3-Point Stance, playoffs or not. That's coming up right here on the 3-Point Stance.
And another thing that's coming up on the 3-Point Stance is the best. And when I say the best, I mean the best sports book in America. Get ready to tackle NFL action, college football playoff action, and all of that with FanDuel. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, on college football, on the World Series, whatever you would need all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Thank you so much for making the 3-Point Stance your first listen every single day. All right, Kenton, playoffs or not? Do the Ohio State Buckeyes make the playoffs? Struggled a little bit this past weekend against Nebraska. Are we concerned at all with Ryan Day's squad, or is this a playoff team?
Both can be true, and both are true. I'm concerned with their ability to run the ball, but this is a playoff team. Yes. Let's be very honest. Even with the expansion of the Big Ten is the M, the I, the D, the D, the Y. It's mid-E. It's mid. It is mid. They're going to find a way to get into the playoff because outside of Oregon, who do you see in that conference that you would say they could functionally beat Ohio State at a high level? Yeah, I'll even give you Penn State. That's 2 losses, and that's a huge brand. Ohio State will not get left behind off of 2 losses if they don't make the Big Ten championship. And mind you, those 2 losses would be if they were to lose to Penn State at some point, which I don't even know if they have Penn State on their schedule remaining. Is that a thing?
Ohio State?
Yes.
They play this weekend. Ohio State, Penn State this weekend. Yep.
So that game this weekend will still not be an eliminator for the college football playoff because, again, you're looking at Ohio State, massive brand, 2-loss team potentially, not getting into the playoff because you're a 2-loss team. For a Penn State team that everybody does this every year where they're like, oh, this is a great team. This is a great team. Well, you can't ding them for losing to a great team. Trust me, I've seen this play coming for a while because I knew Penn State ain't for real, but we keep calling them for real. Why? Who does this serve? And then I realized it serves Michigan, Ohio State for when that playoff expands because they can lose that game and still get in. I'm telling you right now, Ohio State is in. There is nothing we can do about it.
Yeah, that's probably true. That's probably true at this point. Yeah, they play Penn State, Purdue, Northwestern. Yeah. Indiana.
Here's the thing.
And then Michigan.
Here's the thing. What's the most games you think they could lose and get in with? Because if Penn State runs the table hypothetically, right? I'm sorry. If Indiana runs the table hypothetically, what is their schedule? What does their ranking look like? You cannot leave an Indiana football team that is undefeated in the Big Ten. You can't leave them out. So now you need to elevate them somewhere into that top 10-5 conversation. You said, well, all of Ohio State's losses are the top 5, top 10 teams. Yeah. And they can beat anybody that's there.
Right. Well, this is going to be one of those situations. We've talked about it more specifically with the SEC championship loser. Are they going to get penalized for losing? Right. But you look at it now, like Ohio State's 3-1 in conference play. Indiana and Oregon are undefeated at 5-0. Penn State's 4-0. And this seems like, to me, where they may have to make a decision. If Ohio State does lose to either Penn State or Indiana or Michigan, and they're sitting there at the end of the season with 10-2, they're probably not going to the Big Ten championship game. So then the question is, do they take a loser of Indiana or Penn State in the Big Ten championship game?
You have to.
Over Ohio State. That to me is going to be I think that's going to be a decision that they're going to have to make.
Well, I don't think it's much of a decision at all. You can't give a team a boost for not being good enough to make it. Like, that is insanity.
Yeah,
regardless of how you cut it, how you slice it. This team had a tougher conference schedule than this one, and this one lost. It does not matter. If you lose the head-to-head, the games have to matter.
Whose voice was that, Kenton? Like, who was that? Like the voice of public opinion? Like, who was that?
It was the voice of somebody sniveling and not making any damn sense. That's whose voice it was.
Understood.
I don't care if it's the public's voice, some random person to me. It don't matter to me whose voice you want it to be. Just know it's the voice of an unreasonable human being that is talking. Well, we've got to let them in because they're this brand and this is who they are. Listen, I am a believer. If Ohio State finishes with 4 losses, you cannot have them anywhere near the playoff. Period. Right? And that's if things go catastrophically wrong. We all love watching Jeremiah Smith do his thing. We all love watching him cook. We love it. The reality is you cannot put that team in if they lose all of those games. Now, with that being said, you also cannot leave out Indiana if they run the table, go to the Big Ten championship and lose. You can't. What are you doing to look at that team and say, hey, you don't belong simply because we don't think you belong? What?
Let me make the following statement. If Ohio State gets into the playoff, it means 4 Big Ten teams make it.
That's interesting. Oregon? I can see that. Yes.
Oregon. Indiana. I mean, we're at that point where we got to start talking about Indiana as like a legit threat to make the playoff here.
Yeah.
And then Penn State.
Double digit win this weekend.
Yeah.
Penn State. Oh, Penn State. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the next one on my list. Playoff or not. Penn State. They play Ohio State this week, but to your point, let's say they lose.
Let's say
they lose.
Yeah.
And they go 11 because their next games are Washington, which I thought would be a threat, but they just don't look. They don't look like the same team as a year ago, which makes sense.
Understandable.
At Purdue, at Minnesota. Minnesota's okay. And then versus Maryland.
Yeah. I mean, listen.
Okay, they're looking at 11-1 right in the face.
You know me, and you know I don't like to give teams credit or demerits based on, your brand and who you are. The reality is Penn State will get in, okay? How many games do you see them losing maximum at the end of this thing?
One.
Okay, so an 11-1 Big Ten team that could potentially sit out the Big Ten championship.
I think they would go in that situation. I think if they only lost to Ohio State, I think they would be one of the two teams. They'd probably play Oregon.
Okay, so if Ohio State beats them, wouldn't it be Oregon and Ohio State rematching in the
You're right.
conference
You're right.
championship?
Yeah.
So if we see
You're
Oregon and Ohio State, but either way, let's say your situation comes true. Ohio State beats them, but collapses down the stretch, right? They lose to Michigan. They lose to another team. Penn State is still going to get in. There's not a world where they beat Ohio State and don't get in. And I'll even take it further. There's not a world where Ohio State is their only loss and they don't get in. Because we talked about who benefits most from this expansion. And anybody with two good eyes knew Penn State is going to be the team because they are a 300 seed. And
so let's do this. Let's do this because I think this is probably the second most realistic option. They lose to Ohio State, then they lose at Minnesota the second to last week of the season. They're 10-2. They're sitting at home during conference championship weekend, so you don't have to worry about that loss.
Right.
I mean, they're in then too, right? At 10-2.
Yes. Yeah. This is
with no quality win on their schedule.
And that's what I was just about to say. Remember, when we talked about Penn State before the playoff expansion, what did we always say? If the playoff expands, of the teams who will be the greatest beneficiary, Penn State was the glaring one because everybody said, hey, they're a really good team. They're on borderline great. They're
not great. They're not great.
I agree. But the argument is they just keep running into national champions. You run into an Ohio State team that wins a national championship and they beat up on you. You run into a Michigan team that wins a national championship and they could compete if there were more teams in the playoff. They're a 300 seed that's going to pull up to the playoff party with all the other phantoms. And then they're going to get exposed for being a 300 seed. And I'm going to sit here and pretend to be shocked. I'm going to Penn State.
No, you won't. You're going to come on here saying, I told you. I told everybody. I warned y'all about Penn State. That's what you're not going to act shocked. You're not.
Of course. I don't play coy. Don't anybody. I don't do it. You know, it's one of my worst problems. That's why I'm single now. But the reality of this thing is very simple. Penn State is in. I mean, they're unless they have a meltdown, they're in.
All right, I got a few more. Boise State. Are they a playoff team?
Boise State is tough. Boise State is so tough.
They got to play Friday night again, Kenton.
Right.
They're playing Friday night again. What are we doing?
Can we please stop having Ashton Gentry playing football when people are out in the club? Please. Let's please knock that off. With that being said, I think that they're in. I thought the only shot that anybody had was if both of the service academies went undefeated. Yeah. And then there was an epic matchup, a clash of the Titans between Army and Navy, where the undefeated team ends up being the winner of their conference as well, because I believe they're both in the American Athletic Conference, correct?
I think that's right.
Okay, so they would have ended up, playing the Army-Navy game and then playing again in the conference championship, and that team would then have 2 quality wins. However, with the drubbing of Navy that we just saw from Notre Dame, I think that not only pretty much eliminates Navy, I think that makes Army's battle much more uphill than before. So who else in the Power 5, or in the Group of 5 rather, could realistically have a shot to get in over Boise State? And mind you, not only are they winning out a lot of football games, they're also in a situation where their only losses to Oregon, and Ashton Gentry is a Heisman front runner.
Right. And they lost at Oregon by 3 points. Yeah. 3 points. And remember, the narrative at that point was, Oregon struggled with, several teams that they should have clobbered early on in the season. So the narrative was more about Oregon, not Boise State. But now that we have more context and information, Oregon's the best team in college football by most opinions. It's like, oh, okay. That adds a little bit more oomph to it. Because coming up, San Diego State this Friday, Nevada at San Jose State, at Wyoming versus Oregon State. Like, this Boise State team should be 11-1. I will say, if the service academies beat up on each other and then, they both trip and then Boise State somehow falls apart, I do think Tulane is interesting. I don't think they're a bad football team. I think they're pretty solid. They just lost 2 games early, and it's going to be kind of hard to overcome that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this. With what we're talking about with the service academies, the goal and the realistic outlook on this thing is fairly simple for Army. You're saying to yourself, run the table. That's all you can do. All you can control is all you can control, right? If they run the table, they will be closer. I think that they will have a closer shot, but they're still on the outside looking in, depending on Boise State to lose, which I'm not sure is necessarily fair. I'm not sure if that's necessarily fair that, hey, I'm sorry, group of 5 team, you ran the table and this team benefited from scheduling tougher and having a loss. Right. I don't think that's necessarily fair, but I get it. The games have to matter. And even though Oregon is a hell of a team, to me, I'm not saying, hey, encourage teams to schedule like Liberty, but at the end of the day, even Liberty got exposed, right? Like, even if you schedule all bad teams, eventually there will come a time where, oh man, did we just lose to a bad team? And that boom knocks you out. So I'm interested to see how that shakes out. And let's be honest, would you be opposed to both of them making it? You're an SEC guy. Tell me, would you be opposed to both teams? Army and Boise State? If Army's undefeated, Boise State walks in with 1 loss, you opposed to both making it?
No, I'm not opposed to it.
I'm not. I'll take that
opposed to it.
I'll take that deal.
I think it. I think I'd rather 2 other teams make it, but yeah, I think that's fine. Like I have a hard time believing that there aren't 12 other teams better than Army. Boise State, I think, makes more sense. But like you said, if you keep winning, I mean, who am I to tell you no?
Let me tell you something. If the greatest fighting force in the history of the world is killing folks with a triple option attack, I'm not going to stop them from getting in and they're undefeated. I ain't going to hold them out. Go Army, beat Navy, baby. Go. I'm joking. I'm not on Army or Navy side here. I am on the side of anarchy. So, yes, Army, go run the table.
What a story that would be, though. Like, the first year the expanded playoff and a service academy gets in, like,
oh, that would be
that's good for America, right?
It is.
Like, forget about college football. That's good for America.
It makes me demand that everybody tell me, what is a kilometer?
All right. Who won the weekend? Who lost the weekend? That's coming up on the 3-point stance. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Can you imagine buying tickets to something anywhere other than Game Time? I can't. Game Time has a new feature that's called Game Time Picks. It makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier. Game Time Picks, it filters out the fluff. You don't want those tickets that are like 1 row ahead of where you're wanting and they're like $400 more. Game Time filters it all out, and they can always so you only see the incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. They also have the all-in pricing feature, which I love. You can toggle this feature on and off to where it shows you the total up front, so you don't get to the checkout screen and you're like, where did all these fees come from? It shows you everything up front, and I love that. So you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Final few minutes of today's edition of the 3-point stance. Zach Blackerby, Kenton Gibbs. I'm going to start with the winner of the weekend. To me, if you're an everydayer for the 3-point stance, you know where I'm going. BYU, a dog, going to Orlando and says, why in the world are we not favored? We don't care. We're going to do our business anyway. But the disrespect was heard, Kenton. It was heard, and they lined up and beat UCF for 60 minutes.
See, Jay is ducking today because he got that retwist off FanDuel, like I told y'all. I told y'all that Jay was going to put his money on BYU because he said these edges, they get a little wispy. I got to get my hair redone. And I'm going to get that money off FanDuel of all the suckers and fools talking about, oh, well, you know, BYU just can't stop the run. That's the problem. I'm Jay Smith, Texas super fan, and I'm here to tell you that Texas can't stop the run. Look at him. Now he can't be here because he's at home getting hot oil treatment for his new retwist. I'm just saying he did it off y'all money. You didn't listen to me, and now BYU is a winner of the weekend because you believe Jay fool. So that's a shame. It's a sin and a shame, I tell you.
Who's your winner of the weekend?
Oh, you know, I got to keep it in the Big 12. You know, I got to keep it in the Big 12. Mr. Deion Sanders. Ooh. And them Colorado Buffaloes One of the worst teams in football just 2 years ago. Last year, everybody kicked them while they were down. Everybody spat on them while they were down. Everybody disrespected them while they were down.
Yep.
Who's talking now? Bowl eligible with not one, but 2 guys in the Heisman race. Who's talking now? Oh, Travis Hunter can't do much. Just a mild 153 yards and 2 tutties on offense. Just kind of shutting down one side of the field on defense. It's everyday stuff. Shout out to Miss Peggy as well, because, they called her to tell her she was going bowling with the team. She's a super fan of Colorado the way that Jay's a super fan of Texas. It's kind of that type of relationship there. And I'm going to tell you something. I want the apologies to be as loud as the disrespect. Everybody hated on Deion. Oh, Prime Dom can't coach. He's just punching his son through. He's just doing everything. Well, I think that at least 6 teams in America are saying they doing a whole hell of a lot more than just pushing that son. I don't know, huh?
That's right.
They doing all right, huh?
They keep winning. They keep winning.
Yeah. I'm from Detroit, the home of the Buffs, the glasses at least. So I got to be buffed up for this. I got to tell you that the Buffs are for real.
SMU is another winner this week.
Okay. All right.
Surviving against Duke in overtime. And they set up what I think is one of the more fascinating matchups in all of college football this weekend, when this is going to feel weird to say, the number 20 SMU Mustangs take on the number 18 Pitt Panthers in a game that has major ACC championship implications, which means it has playoff implications.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll tell you this much. Who could have thought coming into the season? Very seriously. And I'm an ACC guy. We saw SMU as a team with an outside chance to upset the apple cart for certain teams.
Sure.
You got some big names coming, so you could feasibly say, I got it. You're supposed to be the team, but we got you. And then Pitt. I want to give people context on what Pitt has been all season. And SMU, I know this is about SMU and how fantastic they've been. Rhett Lashley, everybody know how much I love Rhett Lashley. He's one of the best offensive minds in the game.
Sure.
With that being said, I look at this Pitt team. One of their star defensive ends transferred out. I believe it was either after spring or right before spring started. And he said publicly, I'm transferring because this team cannot win.
Wow.
One of their sack leaders, if not their sack leader from last year, said that about this team and transferred out. And mind you, he said that publicly. He put it on the record in a newspaper. This team cannot win. And look at where they are. These are 2 of the best stories, not just in the ACC, in the country. SMU doing their best Vegas Knights impression, saying, hey, year 1, we're ready. We're coming. We are here. Pitt saying, despite what you may think about us, despite what you may think about Narduzzi, people always say everyone outside the media hates Narduzzi. Well, damn it, there's a reason. He wins football games and he is himself. Those are 2 things that will endear you to the media. I'm sorry. He may not leave your locker room pristine, which is shame on you, Narduzzi. You need to do better with that. But he's going to win football games. He's going to be himself. So both of these teams are amazing. And you are absolutely right. What a time. And I'll tell you, if we were having an honest conversation, a real honest conversation, both of these teams should be pushing to make the ACC a 3-bid conference. We should be looking at these 2 teams saying one of them has a loss to an undefeated BYU, and the other is lossless. To me, if either one of these teams, you keep the same schedule, just put an SEC patch on their chest, all of a sudden, look at Mizzou, they'd be, let's talk about this now. Let's have a real conversation about who they are now.
You're right. And it's going to be interesting because whoever wins this, I'm going to be fascinated because they may have a situation where they've got 3 teams undefeated in conference play, because the way the ACC scheduling did not help them this year as far as determining who their best team is, best 2 teams. Clemson, Miami not playing each other, and then, the winner of this game not playing Clemson. Like, it's just wild to me. And if SMU wins, like, they don't play Miami either. It's just it's amazing. It's amazing to me, like, the odds of that happening. Does Pitt play? No, Pitt plays Clemson. So
I was just about to say Pitt plays Clemson. I know Pitt plays Clemson coming down.
So like if Pitt beats SMU, at least then we'll get more answers. But yeah, goodness gracious, craziness.
But to me, I think it's a shame that Pitt beating Clemson is the only way that the ACC becomes a 3-bid league. Because I think even if Pitt gets demolished by Clemson, or if they lose that game closely, I think we should still be a 3-bid league. But I know the only way for it to be 3-bid is if Pitt beats Clemson and then goes on and either loses competitive or beats Miami in the conference championship.
So you think an 11-1 Pitt with a loss to Clemson doesn't get in?
I'm not sure. I'm not
sure either.
I want to be sure. It's like X-Files. I feel like Mulder and Scully. I want to believe, but I'm not sure that we could go ahead and say, I'm guaranteeing you, sure as the sun rises on the east and sets on the west, and 11-1 Pitt gets in.
Yeah, I got you. All right. Thank you so much for making the 3-point stance your first listen every single day. For your second listen, go check out our buddy Spencer McLaughlin, host of Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin. It's on the same YouTube page or audio feed. For Kenton Gibbs, I'm Zach Blackerby. This has been the 3-point stance.
One glad morning, we're going to have a conversation versus Pitt and Penn State one day.